All right, so hello and thank you for joining us and thank you so much for your patience as well. So my name is Libby. I'm probably familiar to some of you. I work in MTI's Exporter Regulatory Advice Service, much more commonly known as ERAS. And so today is our 5th session of ERAS's 6-part Exporting 101 webinar series. Like I say, we're joined today by Ali, who is the team manager of the appraisals team, which sits within the wider approvals team here at MPI. And Abby, who hopefully will join us soon, is an advisor in MPI's food and beverage team. So they both bring a wealth of knowledge in their respective areas. So a big thank you to them for joining us and for sharing your expertise with us this afternoon. I would also like to extend a warm welcome back to those in our audience who've attended some of our previous webinars, and also welcome to the new names and lieu of faces as well. Thank you all for joining us for the Risk-Based Measures webinar. So a little reminder, the way that we run our webinars is that we're going to keep everyone muted for the duration of the session. And if you have any questions throughout, we would ask you to submit them in the Q&A function, which you should find at either the bottom of your screen or possibly at the top. So you can pop them in as we go along and we will answer those at the end. Right, so we like to think and talk about exporting as a journey, and this is a bit of a high-level journey map. Crucially, you'll see that it's not a linear one. What we're talking about today begins right at the very start, so meeting New Zealand requirements. And when we're talking about risk-based measures today, we're talking about the different legislated plans or programs to manage risk that New Zealand businesses need to operate under, depending on what product you're handling and how you're handling it. So risk-based measures are also integral to be eligible for that certification that we've talked about in our previous 2 sessions as well. So that's good to keep in mind. And so today, Ali is going to provide some important background to risk management programs under the Animal Products Act. He's going to break down the life cycle of an RMP from development through to cessation and give us an overview of your responsibilities as an RMP operator. And then all going to plan, Abby's then going to join us to talk first about food control plans and national programs under the Food Act. What are they, who needs one and why, and also how to set one up when you do. And also she's going to talk to us about wine standards management plans under the Wine Act. We'll then close with an opportunity for you to provide feedback on today's session, some key messages, and then finally we'll look at your questions and we'll fire them to our experts to answer. So I'm just going to skip through a few slides now to get to Ali's material and we'll get into the substance of today's presentation. Take it away, Ali.
Thanks, Libby. Good afternoon, everybody. As mentioned already, we're talking here about the fundamentals that you must know at the earliest stage of the exporting journey. I'm going to start talking to you now about risk management programs under the Animal Products Act 1999 and the correlation of why an RMP is very important in a person's export journey. So if you are processing animal material or animal product for export, then it is very important that you understand that an RMP is the foundation of all export eligibility. Okay, the first important question I think one needs to ask is where does the RMP mandate come from and why? Now, the answer, it is the Animal Products Act 1999. Now, what problem was the Act established to address? Let me just start by saying that the Act was established upon the understanding that foods of animal origin present one of the foremost risks to the health of humans and other animals because of the potential to transfer animal diseases, harmful organisms, chemical residues, or other contaminants to humans and other animals. Now, the problem that the Act seeks to address is how we identify and then eliminate, minimize, or manage these risks. Now, the role of an RMP is to be the primary mechanism for the management of these risks. Then the outcome of using an RMP is that the animal product is fit for its intended purpose, in that it meets the appropriate New Zealand standard and therefore eligible for trade, including export. As some of you may know, we are a member of the World Trade Organization, and as such, we have the obligation to have appropriate risk management mechanisms in place to prevent the spread of animal diseases in the way we trade in animal products. So again, as mentioned, an RMP is therefore the primary key that unlocks export eligibility. Now to the next slide, please. Now, what is an RMP? RMP is defined in the Animal Products Act as a program designed to both identify and control, manage, and eliminate or minimize hazards and other risk factors in relation to the production and processing of animal material and animal products to make sure that the resulting animal products is fit for its intended purpose. An RMP generally contains information such as the identity of the operator, animal products processed by the operator, premises where processing takes place, procedures the operator will use for identifying, controlling, and managing the risks, and it is based on the principles of HACCP. So you'd see now the link between this definition in the Act and the mandate for establishing it legislatively in the first place, and its role in export eligibility as described in the previous slide. Furthermore, each RMP is tailored to the risk reasonably likely to occur in a business, depending on the animal material involved, the process used, and the product range. Next slide, please. So now in this next slide, we'll just talk at a high level about who must have an RMP. Firstly, you must have an RMP if you are a primary processor, unless you are exempt by regulations. The term primary processor is defined in the Act, so please do look it up. But in essence, a primary processor is basically one who carries out the first level of processing after primary production. So if you're using meat as an example, lambs in particular, so the raising of the lambs would be primary production, and the actual slaughtering and dressing of the lambs would be primary processing. So everybody who involves in primary processing will have to have a risk management program in order for their products to be eligible for export. Now, if you carry out any form of dairy processing, it is very important that you remember this. All forms of dairy processing are considered by the Act as primary processing, meaning that all dairy processors therefore must operate under an RMP unless exempt by regulation. So I've looked up the regulations for you, so you don't have to. So current regulations only exempt dairy processors who are not farm dairy operators from having to have an RMP if they operate under the Food Act. And the thing that you must remember is that if you're a dairy processor and you operate under the Food Act, your products will only be eligible for the domestic market and for Australia, but not for any other countries for that matter. Also, you must have an RMP if you are a dual operator butcher, meaning you are a retail butcher and you also do home kill and you process recreational catches. And the reason for this, because dual operator butchers do both regulated and unregulated processing, the regulated part being the retail part and the unregulated part being the home kill and recreational catch part. So mandating the RMP means that the proper separation is in place and the risks are well managed between the regulated and the unregulated activities. It's very, very important to note that if you are a dual operator butcher, your products are not eligible for export, regardless of whether they are processed under the regulated side of things, meaning your retail butchery side, or the unregulated side of things, meaning your recreational home kill side. Also, you must have an RMP if you are a secondary processor. Secondary process is also defined in the Act, and it basically means any process after the primary processing stage. So if you were in that category, you must have an RMP unless one of these two apply. You elect to operate under the Food Act, or you are exempt by regulations under the Animal Products Exemptions and Inclusions Order 2000. But please, please, please remember that if you elect to operate under the Food Act instead of having an RMP under the Animal Products Act, there are consequences to your export eligibility, meaning basically that if you are a secondary processor and you elect to operate under, say, for example, a food control plan or a national program under the Food Act instead of an RMP under the APA, under the Animal Products Act, then your products cannot be exported to countries that require export certificates from us. Forward slide, please. Now in this part, I'll just talk to you at a very high level about the life cycle of an RMP from development all the way to the point of cessation or the point where they die. Let's start with development. So this is the responsibility of the processor. You are responsible for developing your RMP, and there are generally 3 ways in which you can do this. You can base your RMP off a MPI-approved template or a code of practice where one is available. Number 2, you can create your own RMP. There'll be one that is tailored specifically to your type of processing, and you can do that by following the RMP manual published on the MPI website. Or if you are currently operating under the food control plan under the Food Act, you can convert that into an RMP. Do get in touch with MPI and we can advise you on how you do that. So there are more details on the MPI website to help you, so please do check it out. We'll jump into the next part, which is validation. Validation is effectively the process of collecting evidence that shows that your RMP can consistently produce animal material and animal products that are fit for their intended purpose. An example of this would be providing evidence that you're complying with regulatory limits for heat treatment, for example. Again, they are very helpful resources on the MPI website, so do look it up. And sometimes you may provide an RMP and there are parts that you're not able to validate. And we have the ability to give you the registration conditional upon the validation of those parts at some later stage, in which case you can agree with MPI on a validation protocol to be able to do that. Next part is evaluation. You will need to get your RMP evaluated if you created your RMP without using a template or are converting a food control plan from under the Food Act into an RMP. So an evaluation is effectively a review of your RMP by a recognized evaluator, which is recognized by MPI, to make sure that the RMP is valid in terms of all its contents, the fact that it can produce animal products that are fit for purpose. Again, if you use an MPI template, then no evaluation is needed unless you change or any of the sections in there, then that may need to be evaluated. There are lots of resources available online for this, and including the list of all the recognized evaluators that you can use. So please do look that up. In a next part on the process is registration. This is the stage where you apply to MPI for registration of your RMP. The application package will generally include a copy of your RMP, a letter from the verification agency to confirm that they will indeed be providing verification services to you, the evaluation report from the evaluator where that is applicable, a completed application form, and the application fee. The time frame for processing an application is generally vary, depends on the complexity of the application itself. But as a matter of business practice, we normally allow it 20 working days. But it could be done well within that time frame if it's a simple enough application. Then there are helpful resources available online about the registration process and what you need to do. The next step of the process is verification. After registering your RMP, you must get it checked regularly by an MPI recognized verifier. This will ensure you're meeting the legal requirements. How often your operation is verified, that will depend on your compliance history and your choice of markets that you are selling to, whether domestic or export. So there are fees associated with verification, and we strongly recommend that you discuss this and look into this before you make your choice of the verification agency that you choose to provide verification services to you. Yeah, the last part of the process there is when your RMP die. There are 2 situations where this could happen. It could happen temporarily if you voluntarily suspend your RMP. You have the power under the Act to suspend your RMP for your own reasons, or it can be done mandatorily by MPI for non-compliance. And your RMP may cease permanently if MPI decides to exercise its power under the Act to deregister it because of compliance issues, or you as the operator just want to surrender it, in which case the RMP will cease permanently. And on to the next slide, our final slide for this part of the presentation. It's effectively like a summary of your general obligation as the RMP operator. As an RMP operator, you're obligated to do all these things, comply with the relevant requirements of the Act, including the requirements set out in your registered RMP, ensure that the RMP is consistent with the applicable legislative requirements, adequately implement and resource all operations under the program, including the provision for instruction, competency, and supervision of all your staff. Ensure that all operations under your program are commensurate with the capability and capacity of the premises, equipment, and your staff. And you make sure that you give your relevant verifier the freedom of access to enable them to carry out their activities as mandated under the Act. And of course, there are consequences under the Act for failing to comply with these duties. This may vary from suspension, deregistration, or even prosecution in the worst cases. That concludes this part of the presentation for us. Thanks, Libby.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ali. Take it away, Abby.
Cool, thanks Libby. Hi all, so as Libby said, I'm Abby and I work in the Food Regulation Directorate at MPI, but more specifically in the Food and Beverage team. So today I'm going to be talking about the Food Act. So the Food Act 2014 is risk-based and outcome-based. So the old Food Act focused more on the premises, so floors, walls and ceilings, as a way of making safe food, but the new Act sets a risk-based, outcome-based regime. We support our food businesses by providing them with tools to ensure they know and understand their risks and how to manage them so that they can prevent things going wrong. We also ensure that they always have adequate procedures for when things do go wrong. So the Act sets the framework for ensuring that food sold in New Zealand is safe and suitable. So basically the Act sets the domestic market requirements, and exporters may be required to meet obviously additional requirements depending on, I guess, the market they're going to and their specific requirements. So safe and suitable food is defined as, so safe food is food that won't make people sick, and more specifically the young, the old, the pregnant or immune compromised. And suitable food means it meets compositional labelling and identification requirements and is in the right condition for its intended use. So the Act promotes food safety by focusing on the processes of food production and the people who make the food. We focus on ensuring that everyone involved in production of food understands their role in ensuring safe and suitable food is made and sold. We have over 60 councils and 15 recognised agencies that are basically our boots on the ground, and they're checking on our behalf that food businesses are actually following the rules. Cool. Onto the risk-based measures. So we've got this little diagram here which shows the different risk-based measures and the risk that they have. So the higher the risk, the more prescriptive the requirements are. So for food control plans, which is the purple bar, they're written plans for managing food safety and suitability in high-risk businesses. For example, food service and retailers, which usually includes cafes and restaurants, manufacturers of dairy products, manufacturers of fresh ready-to-eat salads, manufacturers of meat, poultry or fish, wholesale bakeries. So those types of people who are a lot higher risk than our national programs. So under the food control plans, there are two types. There's a custom food control plan where the business develops their own plan and it is evaluated to ensure it meets the requirements of the Act. Or these template food control plans, which are either developed by MPI, an example would be the Simply Safe and Suitable, or industry developed templates, such as BIAN, so the Baking Industry Association have their own plan. MPI has also developed the My Food Plan, which is a compilation of pre-evaluated content to help food businesses develop and implement within their business or to supplement their custom FCP. So it's basically an easier way of getting a custom FCP. Cool. So the national programs, which are obviously for medium and low risk businesses, basically don't need a written plan, but still need to follow procedures to make safe and suitable food. And they're also expected to keep some records. Then under the Food Act as well, in the red column, some operators are actually exempt from registering, such as accommodation providers, clubs, fundraisers, etc. But just because they're exempt from registering doesn't mean they are exempt from following the rules. So they still need to make safe and suitable food, and we provide guidance for them. Cool. So under the template food control plan, businesses who use this is mainly restaurants and cafes, so food service. You've also got food retailers, which can be retail butchers, home bakers, delis, etc. Cheesemakers, as well as the industry developed, as I said. With the template FCPs, usually they're registered through the local council, unless you are registering multiple sites in different council areas, in which case you could register with MPI. When it comes to the custom food control plans, people who register these manufacture high-risk foods, such as, ready-to-eat salads, meals, meat, dairy, etc. Or they want to create their own unique plan tailored to their way of doing things. So they're doing processes not covered by other plans that need evaluating. And their registration authority is us here at MPI. And then for national programs, so for National Program 1, which is the lowest risk, this covers people who are extractors and packers of honey, transporters or distributors of food products, manufacturers of sugar. For National Program 2, it's more medium risk, so this covers manufacturers of confectionery, jams, shelf-stable sauces and spreads. And then National Program 3, which is a bit more higher risk, but still not as high a risk as the FCPs, covers processors of grain, manufacturers of oil, brewers and distillers. And usually the registration authority is the council, unless again you're registering multiple sites in different council areas, in which case it's MPI. Cool. So when would exporters need a risk-based measure? So you would need a risk-based measure if you're manufacturing food in New Zealand. If you manufacture animal products, then you may need a RMP if you're sending to countries that need official assurance, or if you are storing, distributing or transporting food. So how to figure out, I guess, where you fit under the Food Act? We've got this tool on our website called My Food Rules. You go through there, you answer some questions, and then at the end it should spit out an outcome and tell you where you fit and what you need to register. Cool. So once you've figured that out, your next steps are to read and understand the plan or program you need to follow. If applicable, fill it out. Find out who you need to register with, whether it's MPI or council. If MPI, then follow the registration steps outlined on our website. If council, then we recommend you contact them directly or check their website for next steps. Once registered, get your business checked by a verifier, and then continue making safe and suitable food. Cool, so that covers the Food Act. And now if we move down to the Wine Act. Cool, so under the Wine Act, there's things called WSMPs, so Wine Standard Management Plans. So these are, again, same as the Food Act, they're risk-based measures. So if you're making grape wine for export, then you do require a WSMP. If you are making fruit wine, mead, cider, then you can also register a WSMP, or if you're making these products along with other food products, then you could register under the Food Act rather than the Wine Act. So there are a number of ways to get a WSMP. You can either get them based on codes of practice, which are, I believe, are on our website, or you can use the winemaker's template, which you can get by going through the My Food Rules tool. Basically, the main requirement is for operators to register, and there are a number of ways to do this under the Wine Act. There are some exemptions to registering under the Wine Act if you're a small-scale winemaker, and more information of these can be found on our website. So the Wine Act, rather than the Food Act, so rather than food safety being the main focus, the Wine Act focuses mainly on label claims and protecting our reputation, and MPI is the sole regulator. Currently within my team, there's a reg redesign project going on with the Wine Act regulations, so these are currently being reviewed, and in the next year or so, they will likely be updated, and more information about this is on our website.
Awesome. Thanks, Evie. Great. Yeah, so thank you both. You've given us a lot to think about, and I think it's great to understand the why as well as sort of the what's and how's. So thank you both for giving us the why as well. So I do want to leave you with some key messages, or take-homes, I suppose you could call them. And the first one of those is that really which risk-based measure that you need to operate under will be dependent on the products that you're handling, what you're doing, and also crucially the markets, the export markets, sorry, that you are considering. The second key message is that time and cost involved in establishing and then maintaining your risk-based measure can vary. So that's really important to keep front of mind as you're getting export ready. And number 3, we say this every time, come to MPI early. We are here to help and certainly happy to help. And so there's some useful contact information up on your screen now. The first of which is that info@MPI email address. This is a great point of contact, well, the best point of contact, sorry, for sort of any general inquiries that you have. This team does a really great job of finding the right person within MPI for you to talk to. I promise it's a human at the end of that inbox, not a robot. If you want to reach out to Abby's team with questions about the Food Act or WSMP, then their Food Act info@MPI. And lastly, if you want to reach out to me or my team with an export query, our details are there at the bottom as well. So thus concludes our presentation today. A big thank you to Ali and Abby for sharing your expertise with us this afternoon. And thank you to you, our audience, particularly for your patience at the start there. Thank you so much for joining us for part 5 of our Exporting 101 webinar series.